there, in this video we're going to talk about chord voicing. Chord voicing is how you want to create your chord, or the notes that you're going to put in your chord to make it sound the way you want it to sound. Inversions are a type of chord voicing. Your root, I'm using C root here, 1, 3, 5. We could also have a different inversion of C, that's a different voice of the C chord. Because we have a different note on top and a different note on bottom. It might be easier to think about it in terms of a choir. In terms of what's your bass voice, your bottom note, what's your soprano note or your top note, and what's your middle note or your alto or tenor. And those are three voices in our root C chord. We can voice our chord any way we like. We've just changed, moving to our first inversion of C, what the bass note is and what the soprano note is, or what the bottom and top notes are. So it's a completely different voicing of that C chord. Now, we could add a variety of different color notes, or add voices, or take voices away from our chord. So, if we had just our regular C root chord, we could add a voice and make it a 4-voice chord by adding a flat 7. So it's now a C7 chord. 7s are always the flat in your major scale. So that's our major 7. If you just see a C7, you want the flat. And we can voice the 7 chord differently as well. We can bring it to the bottom and make our bass note the 7. Or we could make this a major 7 instead of a flat 7. And we could voice that at the bottom too. And that gives it a completely different sound. Most pianists will be used to playing in the second inversion of chords because it generally sounds the nicest. For whatever reason, having the 5th note in your scale as your bass note sounds really nice. Now, I've only been talking about voicing in the right hand, but you can add voices in your left hand as well. You can do full chords in your left hand. Now, my hands are doing the same thing, so that might be boring. So maybe I just want the 3 in my left hand, and then I'll do the second inversion in my right hand. And again, that sounds different than if I were to just play the root, changes the way the chord sounds, or what adds or subtracts from the chord. There's another type of color we can add, and those are sus chords. Usually that's adding the 4 to a chord. So going back to our C root here, we could add the 4, and it would sound pretty muddy. And that sounds a little bit messy. So what most people do is if you're doing a sus chord, you remove the 3rd voice, or the 3rd note from our scale, and then it sounds a lot prettier. Now what that voice wants to do is it's really tense and has a lot of tension and color to it, so it really wants to resolve back to that 3rd. And with practice and time, you'll be able to hear where the voices want to go. Do they want to go up? Do they want to come down? Play with different colors in your chords. You could add a 9. It's the 9th note in your scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In C, that would be a D. But usually we're not going to stretch our hands past an octave. We're going to keep it inside our hand and play the 9 chord. And that would be our C9, because we've added the 9th note of the scale, which is a D. There's lots of different options here. You could add 13s, you could add 4s, you can add 7s, sharp or flat, and it depends how far down the rabbit hole you want to go in terms of what colors you want to add. The more colors you have in your chord, or the more notes you have to add and subtract, the more you're going to be able to be versatile on the instrument and pick exactly what you want to play and avoid the notes that you don't want to play. Every white note is allowed in the C major scale, so realistically there are ways to voice every note there, and even some of the flat ones. But you're going to have to experiment with that a little bit to know what you do and do not like. Jazz typically will teach you that there are infinite possibilities in terms of how you progress from one chord to the next. But for most people, start with your roots and your inversions, because that's going to give you the ability to move across your instrument better. Start by learning these 7 chords, which are, remember, they're always the flat 7 in any scale. And those can be voiced outside, or you can bring it to the bottom. Your 9 chords, which is adding the 2nd note in your scale. You can delete the 3rd note in your scale, or the 3 from your 1, 3, 5 in a 2 chord, or you can leave it in. It depends on if you want that color. You can have your major 7s, and that produces another color altogether. So stick with your 7s, major and flat 7s. So adding 4s, and sometimes adding 9s. Or if you want to think about it as a 2, that also works. And that's going to give you a lot more versatility and color in what you're doing. Then you're going to want to approach the left hand and see, what bass note do you want? Do you want to start voicing your chords? A C over C is fine, but a C over E might sound even more interesting depending on what you're playing. And that's where you're going to see chords in lead sheets like G over A, or F over C, or something like that. It's telling your right hand to play one thing and your left hand to play a different bass note. So watch for that. If you have any questions about chord voicing, let me know. I'm happy to explain more things in detail. Otherwise, I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.